types of business entities. Either it is, a sole trading concern, a partnership firm, or a business organization, a joint stock company, cooperative society. So we have seen so many kinds of business setups. So today we'll continue with the kind of development of business ideas and business plans. Okay, so what do you mean by the concept of a business idea? What do you mean by an idea? See, any product, any innovation comes with an idea. Okay, so ideas can be small, ideas can be big, ideas can be complex, ideas can be easy, and sometimes ideas can be stupid also. I mean, without any meaning, you just generate an idea. So anything it can be, but an idea which is generated from the sources, either it can be the internal sources or either it can be the external sources. Now, what are the sources here? You have the, from where you study the economy, you study the problems of the general public, and then you start making some kind of an idea. Okay, then you have the necessities or requirements or the wants of the customers known. Okay, and you also have the trends, what are prevailing in the market. So what are your competitors doing? Okay, in what way they are, trying to capture the market? What are their ideologies? So all these things have to be studied and understood. And moreover, from the magazines, from the foreign markets, from the competitors, and from the trade fairs, okay, from so many sources, you're going to get the ideas, okay? And once you get the idea, then there are different stages to develop a business idea. Now, what is the first stage? The creation. Now, in the creation, you do the brainstorming. Now, what is a brainstorming? Group of people will be sitting together and discussing, talking, giving their views, giving their ideas, giving their representations toward, some kind of a new method or new idea. So generally, in the brainstorming session, the key concept is creation. Okay, so the entrepreneur wants to track the ideas and he wants to put them into varied potential entities so that he can just try to fix up it and start deciding about the ideas. And then we have the assessment. Now, the concept of the assessment is nothing but you assess, you try to analyze your idea, whether this is feasible or not, whether this is possible or not, whether this is conventional or not, whether this will be accepted by the consumer or not. You need to do some kind of analysis towards the idea. Not every idea which is given can be implemented, right? And then we have planning. Now, for example, when I'm talking about the assessment part, like in few of the places, like the metro cities, there was most of the metropolitan cities are highly dense. You have a lot of population and a lot of traffic. So people moving to office and going back to home was very tedious. So few of the MNC companies, they thought that why not? We have helicopters where the employees of the concern can be commuting from their place to a different place. So they are trying to idealize the helipads. Okay, one can be with the company, and what are the possible locations where they can have the helipads, and maybe the commuting can be done easy and the wastage of the time can be reduced. Similarly, most of the MNCs are nowadays, they are having bunkers, isn't it? You can do your late night work, you can sleep there. You'll be given a bunker, you can sleep there, you can relax there, and the very next morning you can refresh and start working in the concern itself. So that is the assessment. So this is an idea. Okay, with this idea, is it implementable? Is it possible? You need to do the assessment. And then you have to plan whether the particular idea can be implemented, can be used. Okay, so and is it going to sync with the business ideas, the business plans, what the concern has? Now, whatever you are doing, it should sync with the business goals and ideas. If it is not syncing, then definitely you cannot have a plan at all. And then you need to have the development. So once you have converted your concept into a concrete form, okay, now you have analyzed, you have done the assessment and you have done the planning, then you need to develop the prototype. Okay, so in the prototype, you will be looking into the visual image of whatever the plan you have, and then maybe you can understand whether the process can be dealt or not. And before that, you might also like to do this testing. Okay, so I mean, this stage involves the test market. So most of the concerns, I mean, you might have learned in your marketing management, whenever there is a product, new product developed, most of the concerns they try to do the testing. Like Surf Excel has done the testing, market testing before they entered the market. Similarly, Maza, the soft drink manufactured by Parley Industries during those times, has done the testing. So you need to test the product before you actually launch the product into the market. And if the results are positive, I mean, in the test launch, you don't get any negative points, you don't get any feedback about the negative issues of the product, then you might go for the launching of the product. And then comes the methods and techniques to develop the business ideas. As I already said, brainstorming. Now, brainstorming is a way to generate ideas. Okay, within a group, you try to generally sit in a casual meeting and you ask each and every member to deliver an idea. Okay, so I mean, you create an environment where the discussion will go in the possible manner. And as I said, the idea might be idiotic, the idea might not be very good, the idea might not be implementable, but still you welcome all different kinds of ideas without any argument. I mean, you want to just take the ideas, like what kind of ideas can be generated. And then once the ideas are given, these ideas are discussed. And here in this process, there is no criticism. The ideas will not be criticized. You only welcome the ideas, you only listen to the ideas generated by the prospective group members. And then we have the reverse brainstorming. Now, what is this reverse brainstorming? I mean, the only difference between the brainstorming and the reverse brainstorming is in the reverse brainstorming, you start with the criticism. I mean, you are allowed to do the criticism of the ideas which have been generated by the group members. I mean, you can have a possible set of difference of opinion, and then you try to generate a new idea or a new concept. And then you have the focus groups. Now, focus groups, they are the structured format of individuals who provide the necessary information. And generally, these are focused on a particular concept. Okay. And this group might generally consist of 8 to 14 participants generally. And then each member will have some kind of creativity and conceptualization. And they develop the idea, and then they try to present the idea by meeting the market requirements. And then you have synectics. Now, synectics is an approach to problem solving. Okay, it is on, I mean, cultivating creative thinking among the small groups of individuals. I mean, always creativity should be encouraged. I mean, the way you are creative, the way you are, experienced in diverse fields, and the skills what you have, I mean, the thinking ideologies what you have, all this can be put on the paper. In that way, the synectics will be encouraging you to be more creative, be more, I mean, the creative thinking should be developed, and that should be presented in the synectic groups. Okay. And yeah, these might be personal, these might be direct, these might be symbolic, these might be relating to the fantasies, anything that is a welcome. And then you have the problem inventory analysis. So in this method, the individuals are mannered analogs to focus groups. I mean, instead of generating new ideas by themselves, you give the consumers the list of problems in a general product category, and you ask to identify and discuss the product in this category. So in this way, the consumers will try to identify the product and the problems associated with that. In a way, if you're solving the problem and you're giving a new variety to the consumers, yeah, that itself is a new product. And then you have scamper. Now, what is this scamper? So it is a scamper. It is nothing but it stands for the prompt ideas, creative ideas. Okay, like substitute. I mean, it is an acronym. S stands for substitute, combine, adapt, modify, put to another use, eliminate, reverse. Okay, so based on that, you need to substitute the existing one, or you might combine the new product, or you adapt to the circumstances. And then finally, you see that there are drawbacks, you modify that, and then you put to another use the same thing, and then either you eliminate or you reverse your programming by starting from step one. And then you have Gordon method. So it is a method of developing new ideas when individuals are unaware of the problem. I mean, see, once you have a problem, you start analyzing the problem and then opting for a solution is the routine one, what everyone does. Whereas in the Gordon method, you develop new ideas without giving any new problem for the existing. I mean, you don't know what are the problems the market has. You don't know what are the problems the product has, but you try to give a new method or a new idea. Then you have heuristic ideation technique. I mean, it is a combination of two or more concepts, okay, formed in a creator's mind. So you might be having some concept, new concept, which generates a new product idea. So you allow the entrepreneurs to explore the different products and their features and what kind of combinations you can have. And then finally, you apply all these things, and then you have the rules, or you might have a possibility of a new product. And then you have mind mapping. Now, mind mapping is a geographical technique, and it is imagining the connections between the various pieces of information or ideas. Okay, so it is a kind of web of relationships where one is interconnected with the other. I mean, you find some kind of connection between the various ideas. So that is what is called as mind mapping. And the latest is now the digital platforms for the entrepreneurs. Now, where we have the live buzz or the startup digital diaries, so on and so forth, wherein you try to have a platform which invites the blogs from the blogs and from the posts from the innovators and the startups, and this first-hand information or the first-hand accounts which try to provide the information with their innovative ideas and experiences. And I mean, each one will be embedded with the interactive nano website that provides an image, provides a slideshow or a short demo video. And as readers click the highlighted startup name in the article, the web feature is developed by the emerging startup. So it is going to say that, okay, so this particular idea is going to be launched today and it is live. And you might have seen, no, even in the blogs or in the Facebook, you see the live streaming of the inaugurals or something of that sort. So this has become the latest platform. Now, coming to the reasons for the failure of the new ventures. Now, whenever we are talking about the success is not a result of a single person's effort. Always, whether it is a success or whether it is a failure, it has so many people involved in that particular act. For example, I say a product is failure. I think the Coca-Cola has introduced Coca-Cola apple flavor. Okay, so the Coca-Cola apple flavor was not there in the market for a very long time. And then also, I think the watermelon flavor also they have introduced long back. Okay, even that product was a failure. So why was the product failed? It's not that only I wanted an apple flavor. I just put apple juice and try to mix it up and say that this is my Coca-Cola apple. No, there are so many people, right from the idea generation to the execution to the outcome. There are so many people, so many entrepreneurial ideas are developed by so many people, employees involved. Okay, so why the product was a failure? Because if suppose I'm going to a shop and I say that I want Coca-Cola, so what do I expect? The Coke consists of cola flavor. I mean, I imagine only the cola flavor. The moment I'm sipping it, if I'm getting apple flavor or I'm getting watermelon flavor, I don't feel like that I'm having Coca-Cola, right? So in a way, the product can be a failure because maybe the idea was not accepted. And remember, for any product, whether it is a success or a failure, there are more number of people involved. It is not a single person's decision or a single person's failure. So the first and foremost, it can be the lack of experienced management. I mean, if the management is not experienced, then definitely you cannot have a proper new product designed or developed. Okay. And improper planning, I mean, you were very unrealistic and your planning was very faulty, because of which the product has failed. Or the proper execution, you did not execute the operation of to run a successful business. Okay, your plan is not executed properly, or you might not have the skilled or experienced manpower. No, who can just guide? I mean, if you give an idea, I mean, they are not that creative in implementing the idea as given to you. Okay, they are unskilled. Or it can be the poor financial management. The resources are not available given to the consumer, given to the entrepreneur at the right time. Yeah, maybe if the finances are not there, you have to compromise. When you're compromising, the product will not be accepted. And moreover, consumer, or your marketing efforts are not that good, and you feel that there is no differentiation between the existing product and a new product. Okay, for example, if you have seen the, I think it is All Out. I think All Out has come up with the paper. You can just put a paper burning, and altogether the mosquitoes will be dying. I mean, a small paper. And for that paper, there were so many modifications. Every company had come out with the alternatives like Good Night or something else. Now, where you can make a cone and put it in the box of a hole, and you can light the paper, so that the paper is not going to fly when you're putting fan or something. And now you have the zigzag, like just like a coil. You'll have a zigzag format of the paper coil, which is going to long last. Okay, so these are all the products. If you see, there's not much differentiation, whether it is a paper, whether it is a coil, or whether it is a liquid. I mean, the work is more or less same. So what kind of differentiation you are bringing in the product? And there is no linkage. Okay, so whether it is the vendors or the customers or other businesses, there is no proper linkage between the connections or the relationships. So if there is a proper relationship developing, you'll have to strengthen that, and then these relationships will try to boost the channels. And yeah, choosing the wrong business. I mean, you have chosen a wrong business, and the opportunity is not feasible for the business, and you don't have proper information about the product. I mean, for example, when it comes to the export market, so if you are planning to export the goods, what are the main things what you have to keep in your mind? Price, because an export product should compete with the local market. So when the export product is much higher than the local market, why would the takers take it? So you need to have information of the market also, where the product is being sold, what kind of pricing strategies are being followed, and whether my new product has the competitive price or not. And lack of entrepreneurial qualities. You need to have a very good quality. You need to be a leader. You need to have knowledge. You need to have alternative thoughts. You need to be creative. So many qualities are there for an entrepreneur. And if you lack them, yeah, definitely you're going to be a failure in the market. Now, how can you prevent these failures? First and foremost is cash. I mean, you need to see that your cash is flowing round the clock. So your finances are adequate, and as and when there is a necessity, you are able to deliver the finances. Because most of the things, when we are talking about the four factors of production, that is land, labor, capital, and entrepreneur. So the factors, when we are talking, everything is with an expenditure. The only thing what you get is the sales through which you get the revenue. So this revenue can be balanced only with the help of the costs what you're making. And if you're compromising on the cost, which would have fetched you a lot of, returns or profits, in a way, that will definitely be a failure. So you have to see that such kind of losses are not there in this particular cash flow system. And you need to develop a strong business plan. See, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Okay, it's a simple saying. A strong business plan is always very important because it is the foundation, it is the outline for the business success. So develop a very good business plan, and you need to avoid high debts. Over infusion of the finances into the project will also lead to the debts. And when you're in a debt, once you are in the debt circle, you cannot come out that easily. And then you have to make accurate projections. Okay, so you need to be very optimistic, and you need to optimize the ideas. You need to change the outlook, and this all can be done by the projections what you are making. Okay, so you might you have to lead them to the appropriate estimation rather than making them over belief, overestimation. Such things should be avoided. So what you are in reality, if you are able to project that, then maybe, yeah, the success can happen. Then comes the effectuation. Now, what is effectuation? It is a way of thinking that serves entrepreneurs in the process of opportunity identification and a new venture creation. Okay, so it is born with an unique look. The idea of unique look for the old problem. Okay, so in a way, your idea, you have an idea with a sense of purpose. Okay, so there's a desire to improve the state of the world, and maybe the individuals also with your idea. Okay, so effectuation theory stems from the way that expert entrepreneurs think about the problems. How do they go about with solving them? What is the problem and how do they go about with solving them? Okay, effectuation is, we have to say that it is a theory. It continues to gain much of the research attention from the entrepreneurship scholars, because there is evidence that expert entrepreneurs use effectuation logic more often than the causal logic. Okay, so you try to identify the problem and then cite the conditions and then go to the solving and then finally apply the solutions. So what is causation? Causation is nothing but the focus is on achieving a desired goal through a specific set of given means. Okay, so it invokes search, it invokes tactics, it underlines the good management theories. And in a way, in one line, I can say that if I can predict the future, I can control it. Okay, so this is what is going to happen in future. Okay, so this is my prediction. So let me start controlling that future from now onwards. That is what the causation takes care. Whereas effectuation, it is the focus is on using a set of evolving means to achieve new and different goals. Okay, so in effectuation, it invokes creative and transformative tactics. Whereas causation invokes search and select tactics, whereas effectuation evokes creative and transformative tactics. So in a way, I can say that if I can control the future, I don't have to predict. I know what is my future. And if I can control it in the first hand, then I don't have to predict, isn't it? Whatever is there, I'm going to Just analyze it and start. Okay. So coming to the categories of differentiation. When it comes to the practice, causation starts with goals, whereas effectuation process starts with their means. I mean, who am I, what I know, whom do I know, how do I do it, okay? And when it comes to the logic, it is more predictive. Okay, so as I said, causation predicts and then plans to control it. Whereas effectuation will first control and then predict, okay? And the money is expected return in the causation, and you predict affordable loss. Okay, this is the loss what I can afford. And the strategy is a competition, whereas effectuation starts with the partnership, and the perception is exploiting the pre-existing knowledge, whereas leveraging of contingencies, you give a leverage, you try to explore, you try to understand, you try to study. That is what effectuation does. And when it comes to the principles, okay, the principles of effectuation, bird in hand principle, you don't have to wait for the perfect opportunity because you already have a bird. You already have an opportunity in your hand. The only thing is you need to take an action. Okay, and affordable loss. Okay, it's okay. I mean, you need to evaluate the opportunities on the basis of the downside. I mean, what are the predictable affordable losses? What are the losses you are predicting and how much you can afford? Are you affording to accept such losses? And then you have the lemonade principle. It embraces surprises that arise from uncertain situations. Okay, so it is rather flexible to the existing goals. And then you have crazy quilt principle. Now, what is this crazy quilt principle? It forms partnerships with people and organizations willing to make a real commitment. Okay, it will try to make a real commitment, and it will try to create the future by the jointly. They need to have the product, they need to be the firm market. Okay, don't worry about such competitive analysis and strategic planning. Okay, in a way, you try to say that it's okay, the future is within us. We have the product, we have the firm. Okay, I have this with me, and you are getting this. Okay, so in a way, we are going to combine and make an option. Okay, you don't have to worry whenever such analysis is going up and down. And a pilot in the plane principle. Now, this principle is represents in different ways where the entrepreneurs start interacting with the environment, and in a way they're going to shape the environment. Okay, so I mean, they are the pilot, the primary people who are going to control like what is there in the environment. And coming to the effectuation process, so it is not a static one, and it is a one-time exercise. You don't have to do, I mean, it is not static, it is flexible. And once you can commit the exercise, that will be staying there for a longer time. Like you have the means, you need to have the goals, you need to have the commitments, you need to have the interactions, and definitely that will lead to the changes. Okay, so that is what the effectuation process focuses on. And then comes the disruptive technology. Now, what do you mean by a disruptive technology? It was first used by Clayton, and what does the disruptive technology say? It is a new way of doing things that initially does not meet the needs of existing customers. Okay, so the things which are not meeting the requirements of the existing customers, you do it in a new way. So what are the examples? Like the personal computer. Now the personal computer has displaced typewriters. Now no longer you see typewriters. And the Windows operating system, now it is a user-friendly one. You don't need anyone to tell you like how to operate that, and it disrupted the television industry. And email. Email has displaced the letter writing, the postal services. You must be knowing the postcard, which was there for years and years. Now it's not seen in the market. Now the postal department has stopped it because very few people or no people are writing a postcard. And then you have cell phones. It has disrupted the telecom industry. You don't have to sit at home to call, or you don't need a telephone, only a mobile phone. Wherever you're going, it is coming with you, so you can just call the person. Or the cell phones, you can say the laptops, which have displaced the computers, and the smartphones have displaced the cell phones with all MP3 player, calculators, GPS services, Word, Excel, everything is there in your mobile phones, isn't it? So these are some of the examples which come under disruptive technologies. Now coming to the business incubators. Now business incubation is the name given to the process wherein an individual or an organization supports the establishment and growth of a startup. Okay, so these incubators give a boost, give a push to the startups. Okay, so I mean, the startups are nothing but the new companies who evolve with the new ideas or new techniques. And these business incubators will be helping such kind of startups. That is what is called as incubators. So now coming to the role of business incubators, it differs from research, it differs from technology parks, it differs in the dedication, it differs in the large scale projects, so on and so forth. Okay, so when I'm saying business incubators, I mean, they are more on the early stage of companies. They do the helping hand. The helping hand is given to the new business startups which are in the evolutionary stage. Whereas the research and technology parks, they tend to go for the large scale projects. Okay, that house everything, right from the corporate, from the government, from the university, from the labs to small companies. Everywhere you can see the large scale projects. But the incubators are in the evolutionary stage, they try to dedicate the things. Okay, so I mean, in India, we find that the business incubators are promoted in different fashions. Okay, the different fashions, as I said, as technological business incubators or startup incubators. Okay, they deal with the technology. When I'm saying technological business in aspects. So just a second, students. So business incubators support the development of startups by providing them with the advisory or administrative support services. So it can be the advisors what they give, or it can be the technical assistance, or it can be the, I mean, the plans, whether the viability of the project, some kind of information given to them. And moreover, they concentrate on the finances. I mean, they give funding to the startups. Okay, it depends upon the project plan, what has been submitted based on the project plan, based on the kind of novelty, how different the plan is from the rest of the market. The financial services are provided. So it can be the, it can be the lease rent or the lower rents, or it can be supporting the firms to get the finances from the banks and the other financial institutions. So some kind of assistance is provided. And then comes the management. So in addition to the financial help, startups also need guidance on how to compete successfully. I mean, how do they manage their finances? How do they develop, a good relationship in the market? Okay, so because they have as I said, startup, they don't have prior knowledge or prior experience. So such kind of experience in the management might also be provided. And then you have the synergy, the close working relationships between the incubator startups create synergies. So these synergies are nothing but the connections or the networks, and they try to see that the relationships are endured for a long time. Okay, so they can be provided with the encouragement by one another. Like, one person who has taken the assistance and has a startup might go in for the other person also simultaneously. Once he's successful, he can just give an encouragement stating that, yeah, how the funding can be done, or how the management training can be taken, or how the kind of help can be given by the incubators and can be taken by them, by the startups, and do the business. Okay. And moreover, we are talking about the economy. So the new businesses have to follow the principle of economy. I mean, too much of expenditure will definitely lead to lot of debts. And I mean, the more you are investing, the more will be the burden to returns. So that aspect has to be, focused on. So here, the tool of improving the well-being of the society and the essence of the entrepreneurship is to see that there is sustainable economic growth and development, and at the same time you are doing some kind of assistance to the society. So generally the business services which are extended to the business incubators are the advisory services, the accounting services, the finance and accounting services, the intellectual property rights. I mean, the property rights where, what can be the trademarks and how you have to follow those rules and regulations, and the legal assistance. You have the office operations, public relations and marketing, so on and so forth. Okay. So what are the types of business incubators? You have virtual business incubator, that is, they provide the online business incubators, kitchen incubator, public incubator, seed accelerator. Like, it depends upon the food industry, public or startups, or it is a program which acts as a seed accelerator, so on and so forth. So many different kinds are there which are going to provide the necessary services to the entrepreneurs. Now, what do you mean by a business plan? A business plan is considered as an important device for any business. Why? Because it is a very important document which explains the nature and the objectives, the financial position of the business, and the way it is going to achieve the objectives, and how they are going to apply the business funds or the loans which are being taken. So all this is nothing but, in simple, what to do, how to do, where to do, and when to do. If you answer all these questions, you have a business plan. It is a roadmap. Okay, so for every successful enterprise will have a roadmap. That is what is called as a business plan. So a business plan provides clear business concept. Okay, in a very simple language, precise language, it will try to tell what is the business concept, and what is the logical structure, and also explaining the management's capability of achieving those objectives and come out with success, and how to show the profitability to the interested investors. Okay, so what are the elements of a business plan? There are actually 6 elements. Executive summary. Every time the business plan will start with an executive summary. Now, it is an overview of the proposed business plans. Okay, and generally in 1 or 2 pages, you try to present the executive summary, because people don't have so much of patience in reading pages and pages. So in 1 or 2 pages, you have to give the gist of your entire business plan. And what are the areas of the opportunity? Okay, how the plan will, who are the management people, they are comprising from which field, either from the business field or from the new field, and what is their finance plan, how are they planning their finances, whether to raise as shares or debentures, or going for the long-term debt, secured loans or unsecured loans, that will present in the financial plan. And coming to the types of business plans, you have strategic planning. Now, a strategic plan is focusing on the specific responsibilities and detailed dates, rather focuses on setting high priorities and high level options. Okay, so they don't focus on who will do what, okay, and by what date what will be completed. So that will not be presented in the strategic plan. It will give priorities to the options. Okay, so it will plan the outline and see that how these targets are internally accepted or internally achieved. And when it comes to the growth plan, some business plans focus on specific areas of a business. Okay, so it can be the subcategory of the business, or it can be an expansion plan, or it can be a new product plan. Okay, so a startup plan which is developed for investors, where an action expansion plan requires new investment, then you try to give a detailed report of how the expansion is going to take place and what kind of requirements you have. And then comes the operational plan. Operation plan is referred as an internal plan. Okay, so how the operational factors are going to take place, the tactics in the operations will be taken care under the operational plan. Internal plan, I mean, this is usually intended for the internal parties. I mean, who are the internal parties? Like it can be the financial institutions or any third parties who are investing in the firm or in the company. Those come under the internal plan. So the detailed financial projections will be presented under the internal plan. And then you have the startup plan. It is the most standard plan which explains the various steps for developing a new business. Okay, so in a way, the plan is going to help in forecasting the sales, profit and loss statement, the cash flow statement, balance sheet, and other statements involved. And then you have a feasibility plan. It's a very simple startup plan wherein you need to have the feasibility. Whether this is feasible, whether this is possible, whether the abstract is presentable, whether the mission statement, what has been presented, is true or not, whether the market analysis is key to the success or not, whether the cost analysis projected is correct or not. So you have so many things wherein you try to analyze the feasibility of the planning. And then comes the plan for funding. So in this, you have investment and lending options. You have venture capital, angel investments, commercial banks, small business administration or loans, accounts receivable, friends and family, and credit cards. Now, the feasibility versus business plan. What is a feasibility study? It will actually tell you whether it is feasible or not, it is viable or not, it is practical or not. That is what the feasibility report tells you. Whereas the business plan will give you the overview of the entire business. Okay. Now, what are the common errors in the business plan? So you don't have a proper structure. I mean, you don't know how to have the structural business. Okay. And then you don't have any understanding of the business. I mean, you lack the knowledge of the business functioning. You ignore the market research. For any successful business plan, you need to do adequate research. Until and unless you do the research, you cannot jump into the conclusion. So you don't do the research. I mean, you don't know what it is just by seeing the people, just by looking at the people, you cannot presume that they really love the product. Okay, so you need to do some kind of market research. And then you have the incomplete financials. Maybe, yeah, you show that you have so much of borrowings, but in reality, the borrowings are not raised, or over the top projection. I mean, you try to boost yourself to an extent where the achievement is very difficult. You predict everything positive, and finally you find a different road. Okay, and then whenever your money is invested by the investors, and definitely they expect the returns, isn't it? So if you are not able to highlight the management team, who are the investors, who have invested an idea, okay, so all these people, if you're not utilizing their skills and abilities, you're not a team member, you're not doing a teamwork. Okay, and if you're not doing a team work, definitely you cannot attain any success. Okay, now coming to the next is the financing part. Okay, so what is finance? Finance is the blood. It is one of the important prerequisite to start an enterprise. Okay, if you don't have money, you don't have capital, enough capital resources, that is totally impossible for you to do a startup or business. Okay, so it is the blood which runs the entire business house. So what is financial planning? Now, as a finance manager, you need to do an appropriate finance planning. Okay, it deals with the futurity of present decision. Okay, so you're going to predict the future, you're going to anticipate the future, and you plan for today. That is what is called as the financial planning. Okay, if 1,000 rupees is your funding, you don't plan to utilize your entire 1,000 on day one, isn't it? You try to split up the amount, and then utilize the amount in a way that your funding is long lasting and your future is predictable. Okay, so coming to the role, a finance manager always plays a dynamic role. He cannot be static. He cannot say that this is my plan and I'm going to implement this plan come what may. He needs to be dynamic. The plan needs to be flexible. Depending upon the market fluctuations and market situations, he needs to modify the plan. He needs to reconsider the plan and then go for the implementation. Okay, so generally the finance function of the finance manager deals with the requirements of the fund sources and the kind of types of assets what he has to acquire and how these assets have to be financed. Okay, so these things have to be generally identified by a finance manager. Now coming to the sources of finances. Now the sources of finance, as I said, it can be from the shares, it can be from the debentures, it can be from the venture capital or venture funding, it can be from the credit, it can be from working capital loans, it can be from the long-term or short-term or retained earnings or own capital reserves. So based on, there are many characteristics to explain the sources of finances. Generally, we have on the basis of the time period and on the basis of ownership and control. On the basis of time, we have long-term sources. Generally, if a period of loan is for more than 5 years, then we call it as a long-term loan. And such loan is generally taken to acquire the capital assets like plant and machinery, land and building, so on and so forth. Okay, and the long-term sources of the funds can be either in the form of a share capital, that is the equity shares, or it can be the preference shares. It can be the retained earnings. It can be the general reserves, debenture bonds, term loans, venture funding, asset securitization, where you put your assets on security and raise funds, or it can be the foreign currency. I mean,
one doubt.
Yeah.
What is venture funding, ma'am?
Venture funding is nothing but where you raise the venture capital. Venture capitalists are the people who start a venture capital funding. It is just like an organization, and through that venture capital, you issue the funds. That is what is called as venture capital. Venture capital is the funding done by the venture capitalists. That is why we call it as venture capital.
Okay, thank you.
I think the terms will come in the subsequent pages. Now, coming to the medium term loans, you have financial institutes, Now, what is a medium-term loan? Any loan taken for a period from 3 to 5 years is considered as medium-term loan. Okay, and then it is generally raised from the financial institutions, government, commercial banks, or it can be lease finance or hire purchase. And what are the short-term sources? Generally, if it is taken for a period of 1 year period, less than 1 year period, we call it as short-term loans. So these can be from the fixed deposits or short-term loans, working capital loans, or trade credits, or you receive advances from the customers. Okay, so or the bills discounting or payables or factoring services. What is factoring? You get the discounting of the bills. Okay, so all these come under the short term. And coming to the ownership and control over the business. So there are two parameters which are very important for the consideration. So whenever there is the capital rises, there are two costs. One is the interest and the other one is sharing the ownership and control. Okay, so whenever you are raising the funds on large scale basis, what do? You need to pay more of the interest on the high funds what you have raised. And second thing, sometimes the funds are raised by share capital. So whenever you're giving the share capital, automatically you're transferring your ownership and control to a third party. You must have seen, no, where one company acquiring the another company and it holds 51% of shares. So the moment the company has 51% of shares, it has the control over the decision making. It has the control over the affairs of the company. So in a way, you become the owner of the company. So you need to be very careful and see that these two risks are avoided. Okay. So what is the owned capital and a debt capital? Owned capital is equity shares or preference shares. Retained earnings. What are retained earnings? I said the general reserves or the reserves which are there.
Profits also.
Yeah. And then you have the convertible debentures, venture fund or private equity. And the debt capital is the loans what you take from the third parties. That is, it can be the financial institutions or banks or debentures. Now, what is the difference between a share and a debenture? A debenture is a loan, whereas share is a capital. A debenture holder is a creditor of the company, whereas a shareholder is a owner of the company. Yeah. So, coming to the owned capital, yeah, you have the owned capital. It also refers to the share capital. It can be the equity share capital. Equity shareholders are the real owners of the company. Preference shareholders are the shareholders who get the preference at the time of liquidation of the company to get the dividend. And general reserves, convertible debentures, when your debentures are converted into the owned capital, you call them as convertible debentures. And venture fund, just now I said venture fund is nothing but where you venture capitalists, you create a fund called as venture capital, and this is raised to pool the funding of the companies. And then you have the private equity. You go for the equity of other companies. Okay, so I mean, when it comes to the debt capital, you maintain the fund by borrowings. It can be bonds, it can be borrowed money, it can be the debentures, or it can be the loans from the financial or commercial banks. Now, on the basis of the sourcing, you have the internal sources, retained profits. So every year, whatever profits you generate, you need to declare dividends on that. Okay, dividends to the shareholders. Once you give the dividends, still you have some profits retained. Those will be called as retained profits. These profits are undistributed profits, so which are there with the company. Okay, and sometimes you also set aside some money by reducing the working capital. Now, what is a working capital? The capital which is required to function the organization on the day-to-day basis. So for the day-to-day running of the business, you need the working capital. So if you reduce your expenses, I mean, instead of spending 1,000 a day, if you're spending 800 a day, even for 5 days, if you're saving 200, that becomes another 1,000. So that can be an internal source. Or sale of assets. Now, this should be the last option, because for every company or for any company, assets are the main source. They are the strength. Okay. The moment you are selling your fixed assets in the market, either it can be the land and building or plant and machinery or furniture or fixtures or whatever it is. In a way, I mean, that will pull down the strength of the company, and that will naturally, the company will be going into liquidation, because sale of assets should be always avoided. And then we have the external sources. So the external sources, as I already said, you can raise the fund from the fixed assets, or you can raise the from the short-term finances, or you can raise the funds from the FDIs, foreign direct investments, or by foreign currencies, so on and so forth. Now, what is venture capital? So it is generally considered as a risk capital. Okay, so it is developed. It is generally a private or an institutional investment which is made in the early stage of a startup of a company. Okay, so a fund which is established in the form of a company or a trust which raises the money through loans or donations. Okay, and it proposes to make the investments in accordance with the regulations is called as a venture capital fund. So a venture capital is the money which is invested in the businesses which are, which are with an initiative for the existence of any business. So once you generate a venture capital, you create the venture capital fund. This venture capital fund is through borrowings or through donations or through fundraising, or it can be through creating a trust or so. And you can raise this venture capital fund by investing in appropriate securities or in the third parties, for which you get the interest, which can be pulled together as a venture capital fund. Now, the features are, it is a high risk involved project, because venture capital funding is widespread. It is there everywhere, because it comes through the funding, it comes through the donations, it comes to the investments. Okay, so it is, the venture capital funding is provided by an outside investor. Okay, so he finances to the new or say startup funding or something of that sort. So here, whenever you are starting a startup, so that startup might be successful in the market, or it might cease to be success. Like for example, the food delivery companies, if you say, I think you have Swiggy, you have Zomato, so on and so forth. If you remember, we also had Food Panda. So the Food Panda was a startup, and eventually it lost its share to Swiggy. Okay, so that is what happens. You start as a startup, and eventually, if you are not able to survive, there is a risk. Whatever venture capital funding is being done, that is at risk. And the risk of the project is always associated with management, product, and operations. All the three are always there. So though it was very good, the Food Panda, it could not survive in the tough competition, and then it lost its share to the existing. And then you have the liquidity, lack of liquidity. Now the project is expected to run at startup stage for the several years. So the liquidity, whatever the liquidity is there, the liquidity position of the company is always maintained low. So whenever your liquidity position is low, you cannot expect more and more funding from the third parties, because based on the liquidity only, the funding companies will come forward. And then you have the long-term horizons. Now, when we say the venture capital undertakings, they take a longer time. Generally, 5 to 10 years is the minimum time what they take for the commercial success. So generally, people don't wait for such long time. Now they invest, they want the success immediately the next year. You invest 1 crore today, this year, immediately next year, you expect that to be 3 crores or 4 crores. I mean, at least you need to give minimum time, like 5 to 10 years is the minimum time. What every company needs to have a breathing space or to have a break even. And equity participation and capital gains, the venture capital invests his money in terms of equity. So, I mean, it does not look for the dividend or any other benefit, but the project should be commercially successful. So, the same thing again, today you invest, very next year you expect huge returns. That is very difficult. And then you have the participation in management. Unlike you just give the money like traditional and you just keep quiet and see whatever happens, let me have a look. No, that does not happen in the venture capital. You have the participation round the clock. You check what is happening in the management. You try to visualize. You try to give suggestions. You try to give a lot of lot of inputs as and when the necessity is there. And then you have high tech. That is, venture capital looks for the high technologies and innovations. And coming to the types of venture capital, you have seed capital. So, I mean, if the entrepreneur is just starting out and have no product or organized company, then you have to be taking the seed capital. That is the seed money. You don't have anything with you, but simply, sorry, with an idea, you just go with the venture capital. Or you have the startup capital. You already have a business idea, you have something in your mind, and you just want the funding so that that can be materialized. You go for the startup capital. And early stage or the first round capital, definitely the 2 to 3 years time is given by the venture. And if the entrepreneur is able to prove himself, you go for the early stage first round capital. And whenever the project is successful, you're going for the expansion, then you have the second round. And you're going for the intensive diversification, then you go for the third round capital. And if the entrepreneur may be looking for a partner who can help in the mergers or the acquisitions, under such cases, you go for the bridge financing. Okay. And if you're not liking the particular venture capital funding, you have the following exit routes, where the trade sale, you sell your share to a third party, or you go for the IPO, initial public offering, you go for the public offering, public exchange by listing your shares, or recycling, where you go with the sale of your share to the sub-investors, or it can be the company, I mean the startup itself buying back the shares from the venture capitalist. Okay. So generally these are the acquisitions and the buyout options or the financings given by the venture capital fundings. Now the advantages, yeah, whatever the new ideas are there, for that you're going to get the long-term, short-term or medium-term funding. And in a way, the country can be growing, the economy can be growing with the venture capital funding. And from the view of the entrepreneur, if he is able to expand and diverge himself into the various fields, diversify into various subgroups, in a way, you can see that the country is industrialized. Now, coming to the disadvantages, there is dilution of ownership and control, because as I said, the venture capitalist, when he's giving the fund, he would definitely like to have participation in the management. So the ownership is at stake. And if suppose early redemption within the span of 3 to 5 years, if the venture capitalists want to move out, so he's going to go for the redemption. So that is a very bad sign for the startup firms. And whenever it is a long term, it is a very complicated process. Sorry, because it will analyze the the plan in detail, and whenever you're going in detail the plan, you try to identify the micro points, and maybe those points will be definitely the points which are going to disturb the harmony. And moreover, the venture capitalists, until and unless they're going thoroughly with the details of the business plan, they don't come forward in the funding. Okay. And the fund is not released at one go. Generally, it is released from time to time. So, though you have the choice to make the decisions as an entrepreneur, you buy your raw materials in bulk quantities when the rates are less, or you might buy machinery when the rates are cheaper. That is not possible because the time to time funding will only allow you to do the funding only for the stipulated time in the stipulated assets. And it may lead to undervaluation. Okay, so in a hurry to sell off their equity stakes, the venture capitalists, they might go for the undervaluation of the share value also. Okay, whatever I'm getting, let me get it. In a way, you're giving a very wrong signal or wrong impression to the market. Now, angel investors are the private investors. Generally, these angels. Now, what are angels? They suddenly come give a boon, isn't it? So angel investors are the wealthy individuals who will try to infuse their money in the startups. Okay. So in a way, they try to exchange for the ownership or convertible debt because they believe that the company will be succeeding in the future. Okay. So an angel investor is usually a high net worth individual who has huge money backing. Such person will come forward and then they try to invest in the funding. Okay. So the angel investors are individuals and they try to invest in the early stages of the startups. And if you find the statistics, they are not more than 10% of the angel investors in the portfolio. There are very few people. I mean, as I said, until and unless they have the confidence that the startup is going to succeed in the long run, the angel investors are not going to invest. So what are the prerequisites? They they have gained the accredited investor status. Okay, but it is not a prerequisite. And the Securities Exchange Commission defines an accredited investor is one with a net worth of $1 million in assets and more, or having earned $200 in income for the previous 2 years. So such persons will be adjudged as accredited investors, and as per the Securities Exchange Commission, the definition goes by that, and the sources of funding will also be governed by the rules of the investors. And angel investors have their own money, unlike the venture capitalists who take the pooled money, whereas the angel investors, they have their own money, which is going to be invested. So the investment profile will be the startups, and the major factor is that they have 100% confidence on these startups that they're going to make profits in the long run. Okay, and then you have the next one is the export finance. Export finance is a short-term working capital fund which is allowed to an exporter. So, I mean, generally you need to export your products to a foreign country, but there are huge formalities and the payments sometimes where you have to pay a lot of amounts in the concerns so that you will be encouraged for the exports. So under such cases, you go for the export financing. Okay, so they provide the value to the business, and I mean, they try to provide the adequate and timely finance so that they can take the important decisions whenever there is export from the country. And the purpose of this export finance is to start new export business. I mean, they want to launch a new export business which requires the financial assistance or the support. As you all know, if you're importing more goods, that will affect the balance of payments. Whereas if you're exporting more goods, that will give the foreign reserves. I mean, in a way, the GDP is going to grow. So that is where the export finances are focusing, and the working capital or the business expansion. So whatever may be the issue, the export finances are going to provide the aided facilities. So the Export Credit Guarantee Corporation, now this was established in the year 1957. So whenever, they provide the credit and insurance support to the exporters for the consequences. Whenever there is a non-payment arising from the commercial or political risk, these people, they try to ensure the facilities through Export Credit Guarantee Corporation. And similarly, we have EXIM, Export and Import Bank, which has established to help in promoting the foreign trade. So this export finance can be in the form of pre-shipment finance credit. So before the ship moves the frontiers of the Indian borders, till that period, whatever the letter of credit, letter of hypothecation, okay, so the bill of lading, whatever it is, you need all the formalities, the assistance for that will be provided. Post shipment also, whatever the credit facilities are there, you have not received your money, but you need to come back to the Indian waters, then certain kind of credit facilities will be provided. Okay, and then you provide the finances against the invoices. You have the invoices, but they take little time in converting into the cash. So before the cash it is converted, you provide some kind of financial assistance. And you also provide certain financial assistance for the credits, like it can be the export subsidies or the benefits which have been removed. For those categories also, the financing can be provided. Okay. So when it comes to the next subheading, yeah, who can provide export finance? The Export and Import Bank can provide, and few branches of the bank, that is the nationalized banks or the private sector banks or the foreign banks, they also can provide the export finance. And the NBFCs, that is the non-banking financial institutions, can also offer the export finance, or the export promotion councils. Now, these are the councils which encourage exporters, both the old companies as well as the new entrants, with a wide variety of workshops. They conduct, they give the thorough knowledge of the exporting policies, and in a way they also do the funding. So the role of financial institution in enterprise financing. So, when we are talking about the financial institutions, they are the backbone of the company in providing the financial assistance to the corporates and the business houses. So in a way, they try to provide various assistance like holding cash deposits. So the firms or the individuals who have more of the cash deposits at any given point of time, they can use financial institutions like banks to store their surplus cash. And the commercial banks and all, they provide such kind of assistance to the individuals and the businesses in safeguarding and securing their cash reserves or cash deposits. And they also provide a provision of credit. Okay, so for the new ventures or for the existing ventures, as and when there's a crunch in the capital resources, provided if all documentary evidences are thoroughly verified, they might also provide credit. And other than the cash, if suppose any kind of advisory requirements are there, advisory councils are required. So such kind of advisors, wherein you try to give them at the time of investment stage or saving stage or production stage or export stage, whatever stage, such kind of advisors will be offered so that they try to take the right kind of decision. So what are the institutions which support the entrepreneurs? We have the SIDBI, that is the Small Industries Development Banks of India. So the major purpose of this bank is to provide funding to the small industries, and it can also be combined under it can also be providing the direct assistance or the indirect assistance, or it can provide the development support services, or it can also be providing the venture capital funding under SIDBI. Now we have IFCI, now Industrial Finance Corporation of India, and it provides the long-term loans to the financial institutions or the venture capitalists who have the gestation period very long and they need high or lot of crash crunch requirements for the long-term projects. And then you have National Small Industries Corporation, NSIC. Now, this also provides funding to the small and medium entrepreneurs in providing the required finances for the promotion and developing of their industries. And then we have the NABARD, National Bank for the Agricultural and Rural Development. So it is established to provide the credit assistance to the agriculture and small scale and cottage industries. So in a way, again, these are going to provide the financial aids to the developing industries. And then we have the State Financial Corporation. Again, the State Financial Corporation, it provides the term loans and it goes with the discounting of the bills, the treasury bills, and then the guarantee loans, bills of exchange, such kind of facilities which are required by the entrepreneurs for the smooth functioning of the concerned business. Such people will be going for the State Financial Corporation assistance. And then we have commercial and other banks or NBFs, that is the non-banking financial corporation. So all these are there mutually.
One doubt.
So all these institutions are there mutually to develop the medium and small enterprises in funding, in giving the required knowledge or information, training, by conducting workshops, by giving assistance either in the internal or within the country trading, or it can be the export trading. So what are the emerging trends in the financing enterprises? Now, the emerging trends, you have the clusters of innovation where in the sector, we have the alternate lending and shifting customer preferences. Okay, so like it can be the P2P, that is lending, lean and shifting customer preferences, or it can be the virtual banking, or it can be the alternative education, or it can be the banking at platform, or having mobile banking. I mean, these are the things where on a tap of a phone call, maybe you can get the assistance and you can get the funding. And you also get the investment management, like you have the innovative and empowered investors who process the externalization. Okay, so they include the social trading, automated advisors, wealth management, I mean, trading, advanced analytics. I mean, they try to provide the capability sharing. I mean, the robo advisors, so the accessibility, the sophistication, what kind of managerial competencies can develop these entrepreneurs. All these things will be done under the invest management. Capital raising, yeah, as you know, it is the fundraising, how to raise. Generally, we have the crowdfunding. Now, what is this crowdfunding? It is a cluster of innovation among the capital rising. So you try to raise from the general crowd, I mean, the capable investors who have the money and the ability as well as the interest can go with the crowdfunding. And then you have the payments. Now the payments, it can be the payments what you have received, or it can be from the transfers by making the advance orders. So in a way, you can just raise the funds by accelerating these payments and making a fund. And then you have the market provisioning. Within the market provisioning, again, the clusters of innovations are there. You have the machines, you have the market platforms, and you have the emerging trends like artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data. So many terms are being used right now, right? So with all these latest techniques, you need to focus the market and occupy the market. And then you have OECD report on the new approaches of enterprise financing. Now, what is OECD? Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. So during the G20 summit, so this report has been presented, and in a way where you are trying to have the development of the organization with the cooperation and the development principles, where you try to put in the private placements of both the equity and the bonds with the proper credit rating standard. So credit rating will tell you that how good you are or what is your credit worthiness. And then you have the debt securitization. So this debt securitization will tell you that to what extent your debts are securitized. The crowdfunding, it has become one of the popular method of non-profit making organizations, which are pooling the funds through crowd, the people who are really interested in the funding aspect, or it can be the peer-to-peer lending where one business is lending the money to another business, or it can be an hybrid instrument. It can be a combination of two or more varieties of funding, or it can be asset-based category of the instrument where you're factoring your assets, you're factoring your purchase orders, you're factoring your receipts or the invoices. Based on that, you are trying to raise the fund. Okay. So asset-based lending, as I already said, where you try to put your assets as a collateral security and you raise the fund. So factoring is nothing but it is a type of financing where one company buys another company's accounts receivables. So whatever money, whatever invoices are there, whatever bills are there, those bills are acquired. That is what is called as factoring. And what is a purchase order? The moment you accept the order, okay, the moment you accept the order, the company will try to supply the purchase order. Okay, so that can be kept as an hypothecation and you can raise the funds. The warehouse disease, which says that your goods are stored in a warehouse, or it can be a leasing where a lease contract between the lessor and the lessee, or you can have the corporate bonds. Okay, so the corporate bonds are usually offer a high yield than the government bonds, but when it comes to the security is not as good as government. And then you have securitized debt, where you provide securities and raise the debt. And you have covered bonds, are the debt securities which are issued by the financial institutions. And these are backed up by the separate assets, or it can be the private placements or crowdfunding again. So crowdfunding, where the people who are really interested in funding the project, it can be friends, it can be relatives, it can be peer group, or it can be the customers, or it can be the family members, anyone, or it can be the subordinated loan bonds. Okay, so these are received only when the company's assets goes bankrupt. Okay, so to that level, you have to go for the raising of such funds. So it can be the silent participation where the investor is there, invested the money, and he silently participates in the affairs of the company. It can be the participating loans where the multiple money lenders, they invest in the company and have a say in the company's affairs. Or you can have the profit participating rights where you give the money and you say that there's a fixed percentage of profit what you're going to share for the funding what you have done. Or it can be the convertible bonds. Okay, you convert your debt security into an yielded interest payment, or you convert your debenture into convertible debenture bonds. Or it can be the bonds and warrants. Whatever warrants are there, whatever bonds have been issued by the company, you can put that as a stake. You also have mezzanine finance. Mezzanine financing is a hybrid. I mean, it is a combination of a debt and equity financing. Maybe you can go for the equity holding as well as the debt conversion. And then you have private equity, you have venture capital, you have business angels. All these are discussed earlier. So, I mean, this is how a company can raise the funds which are required by the organization. So, either it is an angel, or either it is a venture capital, or either it is a private equity based on the okay, you're able to see, ma? Okay, so based on this, I mean, the company can go for any of the investing options. Okay, so you also have the trade credit. I mean, these are all repetitive. These are the different types of the credit what the small and medium term enterprises can go for the fundraising. You have alternative lending also. What is alternative lending? Wherever the booming industry is there, it is generally a scenario where the business owner will try to fill out the application for a loan online, and the alternative lender, like it can be a bank or it can be any third party, will be reviewing the application, and then the loan is typically accepted. You also have bootstrapping. It is building a company from the ground up with nothing but personal savings, and the cash is coming in from the first sales. So in a way, you're not dependent on anyone. You are depending only upon your savings in raising the funds. And apart from that, we have the fundraising categories where you raise the fund by either it can be the crowdfunding or it can be from the financial institutions with a mission to grow and develop the company. Or it can be the traditional banks also, where the traditional banks are also there, which are going to provide the small and medium term business assistance, business loans assistance to the concerns. So this is what all about the financing options. And then we have the project planning and execution. So what is a project? A project is nothing but it is a project report. Based on your project, only you can raise the fund. Okay. So how good you are able to present your project report. Based on that, the investors will be interested in funding your projects. So a project is essentially a vital groundwork, what every entrepreneur has to do. Now, I mean, the project, whatever the project report proposal you're showing, the proposal should consist of every minor details like what the company is, what the company is producing, what are the funding areas, what are the objectives, and what is the turnover period. I mean, after first year or after second year, when the company is going to achieve the break even, and if any external funding organizations are there, who are the external funding organization? Okay, so the plan and everything has to be presented in the project. Okay, so whenever we are talking about the project, it is something which is dedicated, which shows the goals and the attainment of those goals. Okay, so it is a productive activity which can be analyzed, which can be appraised, which can be monitored, and then the corrective action can also be taken. So it is a project report is generally made to provide the necessary information. Okay, so whatever the necessary information is there, that has to be put in that particular proposal so that the investors will be interested in funding the particular proposal. So just like a human being, even a project has a life cycle. So what is the project life cycle consist of? It consists of pre-investment phase, the construction phase, and then you have the normalization phase. Now, what is the pre-investment? That is the first phase of the project. In the construction phase, you have the developing of the infrastructure and you try to create your assets. And in the normalization phase, you try to produce the goods and services and try to sell them in the market and have your own establishment. Generally, there are 5 phases. Now, what are the 5 phases? The project identification, where you try to find your appropriate project amongst several investment opportunities. And then you have the pre-sanction follow-up. Before the sanctioning of the loan, you need to present your proposal and try to talk about the pros and cons. And then the project will be appraised. I mean, your case, your presentation, and your proposal will be measured. Whether what you stated, what you presented is viable, that will be judged there. And then you have the project implementation. In this phase, I mean, okay, they are happy and they try to conduct the work activities. I mean, as per your work plan and then the visions and everything, they try to look into that. They try to match everything with that. And then finally, they give the feedback. So the feedback is either they might give you a feedback stating that it has to be corrected, or they might say that there are few corrections or few more points have to be included in the project report, or straight away they might say that we are very happy with your project report and the funding will be done. Okay, it all depends upon the kind of a project what you are presenting. So this is the project cycle. Now, what are the features of a project? The first and foremost, it should be simple, easy to understand. There should be clarity, clear, okay, and you need to have the available technology to promote the project. I mean, what are the milestones you have put up in the project? Are they achievable? What are the critical paths? I mean, whether you can, what is a critical path? Critical path is nothing but the deficiencies, what do you say, the hurdles, what are there in your game plan to reach success. From the starting point to the success, you might face few hurdles, what you're expecting. So that is the critical path. You're going in a difficult path. So how do you try to overcome those those deficiencies or hurdles? And then you have the integration of basic production services, like your input, supply, your credit, your marketing, what are your extension plans? Okay. And the more important thing is how compatible your project is with the existing administration mix. You need to give the clarity on that. So once you do that, you need to have the classification of the projects. So what do you mean by the classification? So what kind of projects in what way they can be classified? It can be, graphically expressed, or it can be expressed in the terms of highlighting the essential features, or it can be highlighting the quantifiable and non-quantifiable factors. So there are different varieties of projects. Coming to the first, quantifiable and non-quantifiable projects. So quantifiable projects are those in which the plausible quantitative assessment can be made. I mean, quantifiable, you can quantify in terms of some measurement that your project is going to get this. Your project is something of this kind, and these are the results. Whereas non-quantifiable projects, where the assessment is not possible, but the projects are concerned with the industrial development or power generation or material management, where you cannot put everything in the figures, or oil refineries, how much oil you are going to extract. You cannot say in terms of quantity. Such kind of projects are called as non-quantifiable projects. Then you also have sectoral projects. Sectoral projects are based on the sector. It can be agriculture, irrigation, industry, transport, or social service sector, or miscellaneous, and all other allied sectors which are related to these sectors. Or it can be techno-economic projects. Now, what are techno-economic projects? Techno-economic projects are those projects which are, related to the technological, which are moreover intensively oriented with the market or the magnitude, or it can be the citation, or it can be of any of the group what has been mentioned. So when we are talking about the techno-economic project, the first one being the factor intensity oriented classification. On this, the projects are classified based on whether it is a capital intensive or whether it is a labor incentive. Capital incentive focuses more on capital investments, whereas labor incentive focuses on the number of people deployed, the number of human resources deployed in attaining the business activity. Causation oriented classification, here projects are classified based on the demand based or raw material based projects. Okay. And moreover, it is whether the demand which is peculiar dominating or whether it is the raw material which is more important, that will be judged here. And then we have the magnitude oriented classification. In the size of the investment, it forms the basis, whether it is a small scale or large scale or medium scale or tiny unit investment projects. Based on that, the project can be segregated. Okay. So what is a micro enterprise? Which is less than 25 lakhs. A small enterprise is from 25 lakhs to 5 crore. And the medium one is not exceeding 10 crores. So in this way, the particular categories have been defined. So based on that, whichever category you belong, the project report will be prepared. And the turnover based classification, it classifies the minimum turnover, what you have been expecting. So generally it can be a 5 crore one or 5 to 75 crores or 75 to 250 crores. It is the micro enterprise, small unit and the medium. So the particular terms of investments or the categories have been defined so that will help you in understanding and identifying to which segment you belong. Okay. And then comes the financial institutions classification. It can be classified as the new projects or the projects which are into the expansion criteria, or it can be the existing units only which come under the modernization, or it can be the diversification of the projects. And I mean, based on this, the funding will be done, the projects will be categorized. Similarly, you have the service projects. The service projects can be the welfare projects or altogether service projects which are going to help the general society on service motive. Or it can be the research and development projects which are very much required for the implementation of new ideas, or it can be the educational projects. Now, what are the steps in preparation of the detailed project report? First, you need to identify the project, test whether it is feasible, whether it is acceptable, whether it is implementable, and techno-economic, whether technologically and economically, whether the project is viable, and the design and the network, what kind of a design you're going to implement in the project, what are your inputs, from where are you getting your finances, what is your social cost benefit, okay, and then the pre-investment. So in a way, you have to do all these steps. Okay, so feasibility, you have to test whether the project is viable or not. Technically, economically, whether your project is implementable or not, or only it is good in the books or paper. And whether your project design and network analysis is good, whether your work plan and your network, your connections, network connections, interconnections, are they good? And your input analysis, like what kind of inputs you require, whether it is the material, men or land. And what is your financial analysis? What is your cash flow? How much is your cash flow? And what is your cost volume profit? That is your PV ratio. And what is your break even? And what is your social cost benefit analysis? So the overall worth of the project has to be considered here, whether your project is viable overall, whether it is going to give some kind of benefit to the society, or you are able to meet your expectations or not, that will be analyzed. And the pre-investment, okay, I'm giving the money, whether the project is going to be implemented, and after implementation, what is your expectation from the project? So this pre-investment analysis is must. And coming to the model detailed project, it is also called as DPR. So this is the detailed project report where it is drawn based on the data and the results obtained. So this is how the pro forma is there, where you try to give your introduction, you try to give your scheme, and you try to give your totals. I mean, these are all estimates. So based on your estimates only, the funding will be done. So these are all the estimates what you're going to project, and based on that, you're going to project your profitability within the span of 5 to 10 years. What are the profits you're going to make, and what is your break-even point? I mean, to what extent that point you're going to attain where you're not making any profit or loss? What are your fixed costs? What are your variable costs? Okay. And then the authorized signatory. So once you do all this, you can submit this project report and then you might get the funding opportunities also. Yeah, the next unit is project appraisal. Should I continue?
Yes, ma'am. You can.
Okay. So what do you mean by project appraisal? Project appraisal is nothing but it is intended to determine the viability of a project, whether your project is good or bad. Okay. So in a way, you try to appraise the project, whether the funding has to be given or not, whether what has been mentioned in the project report is correct or not, whether the project is trying to give you the desired results or not. So all these things can be called as an appraisal. So the project appraisal is a consistent process of reviewing your project and evaluating the content. Okay, once the evaluation is done, and I mean, if the results are positive, the project will be approved. If the results are negative, the project will be rejected. Okay. So in simple, your project appraisal is the structured process of assessing the viability of your project proposal. Okay. So what are the steps to be followed in the project appraisal? The first and foremost is you need to focus on the indicators. So what are the indicators? First one is the economic. I mean, you have to focus the aspects like what is the demand, what is the supply, I mean, what kind of a product you might expect some kind of viability in the market. Project size. I mean, if your project size is huge, automatically you need a lot of funding. Rather, if you're starting a small project and then slowly you're expanding the project, that will really give you, I mean, a lot of consideration or returns. And coming to the organizational, it is examined with respect of the incorporation. I mean, what kind of organization you're going to have, whether it is a sole trader, partnership, joint stock, cooperative society, what kind of, criteria you're going to follow. And the managerial, what kind of managerial efficiencies are there? When you scrutinize that, you need to scrutinize that critically the managerial abilities and the capabilities of the concern, whether the person is able in a position to take good decisions or not. Okay. And then you have the operational. I mean, operational, you have so many things like an operational manager has to coordinate. He has to bring the finances, he has to coordinate people, he has to coordinate the material, he has to coordinate with the suppliers, he has to coordinate with the area where the operations are going on. So much of operational activity will be conducted. And last but not the least, finance. So for all the above 5 steps, you need adequate finance. So the financial assistance, how you are planning your finance, the day-to-day planning of the finance as well as the long-term planning of the finance should be taken care. So what is the criteria for the project appraisal? So your investment size, the location of your business, the technology what you are using, the kind of equipment what you are using for the business, the kind of marketing activities you are performing, and the sources of the power, the electricity and the water connection, and the sewerage regulation, whatever waste you are having from the industry. A proper sewerage has to be planned where it is not, disturbing the routine functioning of the local area. And then the managerial capability, what are the working capital needs? That is the day-to-day working capital you need for the functioning. And what kind of a labor component you are using, whether it is skilled or semi-skilled or unskilled. And above all, what is the economic viability of all the above factors? So based on point A 54321, based on this, your project will be appraised. So the economic aspects of the appraisal are, fundamental to justify the benefits. So what are the economic factors or aspects? Your output, your services, increased employment economically. Now, any business concern is given permission or funding option by the government based on the condition that there are high employment opportunities, as well as the land area, which is where the industry is located. Even growth of this land area is also one of the condition. And then you have the large government revenues. You have the funding from the government whenever you are trying to provide the increased employment opportunities to the people of the local area, then which is also results in good revenue, good earnings, good salaries. The government is also earning in the way of taxes, and even the employees or the wage holders are earning good salaries and wages. When these are increased, your standard of living will be increased. When your standard of living is increased, your national income, that is the country's national income and per capita income, will be increasing, and that gives the improved income distribution. And when I'm talking about the financial analysis helps to assess the cost of the project and review the cost of revenues. Okay, so what is the cost? What am I getting back from the project? Okay, so how good the financial project is, the financial soundness is nothing but how good the project is, whether it is having sufficient flow of the money, or on any day due to lack of funds, the smooth functioning has hampered, there's a disturbance in the functioning, and how good the operations are being controlled, what is your cost of production, and how much is the return you are expecting, and what is your return. And once you complete your production, what are your plans of marketing the product? Okay, once you market the product, you sell the product, what kind of profits you're expecting from the market? And if there is any deviation, what are the effective control measures you are taking? And then budgeting, you need to budget. Your actual should never exceed the budget. So what is your budgeting? How far you are successful in maintaining the budget? And what kind of pricing strategies you are following? And what are your source of finances? From where are you getting the finances, whether it is the government or the private? So if it is private, generally the lending rate will be very high. So whatever profits you are generating will be eaten away by these people by charging high interest rates. So is this happening? Okay. And what is your debt versus the equity? So how much is your debt and how much is your equity? Okay. So the equity is nothing but the ownership with debt. And then the other sources, where do you stand in the market? So are your shares listed in the market? So what kind of market acceptance is coming? How many of the successful investors are coming forward to acquire the shares? What is the market issue happening in the market? So this is all you have to study. And when it comes to the market aspects, it will try to help in assessing the marketing opportunities, objectives, and the process plans. Okay, so you need to assess the market opportunities, that is, what is the size of the market and what kind of a specific product I'm manufacturing, and are there any existing competitors, and if I'm a new person entering into the market, what kind of a reception I'm going to get from the market, and what is the demand and the supply, what is the ratio, are the products sufficiently supplied into the market, is the demand met, or there is insufficient supply in the market. Okay, so how good I have to plan the product, what kind of competitive analysis I have to make, how to bring down the competition and see that my product is accepted in the market. So you need to analyze as a promoter all these factors by intensively scanning the proposed environment or the industrial segment, so that you are ready with the game plan. Okay, so this is what is going to happen in the market. Yeah, I have an alternative, and with this alternative, I'm going to definitely be successful in the market. And coming to the technical aspects, that is the location of the site. Where is the location? Where is the site located? Is it very far from the city, very far from the warehouses, very far from the transport localities or the highways? Where is it located? So whenever these factors are not considered, lot of expenses are incurred in delivering the raw material to the godown and delivering the finished product from the godown to the suppliers. And again, the market, you have to deliver the finished goods to the market. So if the distance is too long, you're increasing the expenditure or the price of the product. And the transport facilities, I mean, the transporter should come forward to deliver the goods to the concerned location, as well as take the goods from the concerned location to the place of disbursement. And whether the power and fuel supply benefits are there, if you're located in a distinct location, the availability of the water. So for any business concern, you need a lot of water reserves. And whenever I'm saying water, even the sewerage, whatever the wastage is there, that should also be diverted properly without hampering the groundwater levels. And coming to the manpower, are the manpower ready to come to such a distance place and work? Or are there, sufficient supply of the labor? So all these factors have to be considered, and whatever the laws are there, the labor laws, like 8 hours a week with a with a Saturday, 6 hours, 6 days a week with 8 hours, or 5 days a week with 9 hours. Certain rules and regulations are there, the labor laws are there, whether the concern is following these laws. And coming to the nature and the climatic factors, is it suitable to produce a certain set of products? What are the strategic considerations? What are the taxes you have to pay for the products? Okay, what kind of benefits and incentives you're going to get whenever you are whenever you are trying to produce the products in a distant place. So all these factors have to be identified before selecting the particular location of the site. Okay, and then you have the technical and collaborative aspects. So, any business concern has to technically collaborate for so many technical features, what it is going to introduce, whether it is a telecom service, whether it is a computer, whether it is a cell phone, or whether it is a machinery. For everything, you need some kind of assistance, some kind of technological, you need the information to set up a business. So whether these are easily available for the prescribed concern at the prescribed time. So these have to be assessed when we talk about the competencies. And the last but not the least, we need to have the managerial competency aspects. A manager is a person who actually manages the business. So you need to have a very good representative person who is a watchdog, who is watching not only the local market, but also the foreign market, and take timely decisions, correcting actions. You should be a visionary. You should have a mission. You should have plans which are going to develop the overall company or the organization. If any suggestions are there for the improvement, you should come out with the suggestions. If any, if he can improve the process of the production by changing the existing one, he should come out with that. So, you need to have the technical aspects or the technical viability to be a good manager in deciding the effects. Okay. And then you have the discounted cash flow versus non-discounted cash flow. Now, when we are talking about the financial analysis, you have the both criteria of discounted and non-discounted. So the traditional methods of capital budgeting, that is the payback. Now, what is your payback period? It can be 5 years, it can be 6 years, it can be 10 years, based on your internal rate of return. You try to follow a discounted cash flow method. So here, you try to give equal weight to the present and the future. You don't try to give equal weight to the present and the future flow of incomes. And moreover, the discounted cash flow method will not take time value of the money into consideration. Okay, so it will consider only the net present value. What is the net present value? If you have done the financial management, you would have all these formulae where you can do the formula, where you try to calculate the present value by taking the n number of years. It can be 5 years, it can be 10 years, it can be 7 years. And you also calculate the internal rate. It is a technique of capital budgeting that takes into the account the time value of the money. Okay, so you take that adjusted time rate return and the discounted cash flow and the discounted rate of return, which will tell you the yield method, or which will tell you what is your yield. And you can go with the trial and error method also, whether you want to try with certain internal rate and see that, okay, if it is 5%, if it is 10%, if it is 11%, what would be my yield? Okay, and then you have the profitability index method. It is based on the benefit of the cost ratio. So whatever the profitability index is there, that is based on the cost. So based on these two comparisons, you try to compare the present value of inflows and the present value of outflows and try to find out a proposal which gives you a profitability index. And then you have the non-discounted cash flow methods. So where you don't have any discounting, it is a very traditional technique where you have the payback period. So whatever the cash outlay you have, that you divide by the annual cash inflows. Whatever cash inflows are there, if you divide that, you will have the payback period. So the payback period can be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 10 years. I mean, whatever your calculation you're getting. Okay, and then you have an improved traditional approach to the payback period, where you try to take the reciprocal method or discount payback method, and based on that, you try to find out like how much you are able to reduce the payback period or how much you are able to increase the payback period. And then you have the rate of return. So the rate of return is nothing but the investment which has foregone. I mean, instead of investing that 1 lakh in any other bank as a deposit, you have invested in the company. So the bank would have given you some percentage of interest. So this interest is the, I mean, the rate of return, what you have foregone by not investing in a bank and investing in the company, how much is the rate of return that you're going to calculate. And it can be the return per investment method, or it can be the average return per unit. Okay, so these are some of the examples or the problems you can just put up. I mean, semester 3, I think you also have the financial management. Do you have financial management, or you already done with the financial management?
Done. It's done already.
It's done. So once you apply these, I mean, those formulae here, you'll get the answers like how to calculate. But theoretically, you don't have to represent anything. Just you write what it is. That is more than enough. Okay. So I'll stop here. I think it is already 4:27. So, so the growth strategy, I'm going to start tomorrow. Okay. So shall we leave?
Madam, one doubt.
Yeah.
What is the difference between NBFC and commercial banks and merchant banks?
And
NBFC,
NBFCs?
commercial banks and merchant banks.
Okay, so when we are talking about the NBFCs, these are the non-banking financial corporations. They don't incorporate under the banking instrument. Okay, but they have started with the purpose of starting the business with the aim of providing financial assistance to the institutions which are required. Whereas the commercial banks, they are aided by the government, and the major difference is the small and medium term enterprises, they get easy funding from the NBFCs, non-banking financial corporations. But when it comes to the interest rates and all, the NBFCs, they charge little higher interest rates, though they are governed by the government, but it is not as simple as it is under the commercial banks. Okay, so the regulations, the rules and everything more or less are same, but the lending will be more quick in the NBFCs. And the percentage of interest and the charges will also be a little higher when it comes to the NBFCs. And merchant banking is nothing but these are the banks which have been established to provide funding, which are incorporated under merchant banking law. Okay, so when it comes to the comparison, when we are comparing the three aspects, more or less all the three are involved in providing financial assistance. Whereas merchant banking is more into this, what do we say, the loan services or underwriting or providing financial, they provide the financial services like advisory services, workshops. They conduct the information serving. Okay. So whenever, as and when there is a necessity, they jump into the underwriting also. They give the hypothecation. They take the benefit of the concerned entrepreneur. And on their behalf, they buy the shares or the stock, which are otherwise not sold in the market. That is what the merchant bankers do. Whereas the commercial banks, the main aim is in the loans lending and providing financial assistance. Non-banking financial corporations are also incorporated to provide small and medium-term enterprises loans. But when it comes to the lending rates and everything, the policies are little different from other than that of commercial banks.
Examples, madam. 3 banks for example.
Can we give that tomorrow because it is already past 4:30?
Okay, ma'am. No problem.
Yeah. I'll
Thank
start with the examples. Yeah, I'll discuss that and then proceed with my lecture, right?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, right. Thank you. You have asked. I mean, I'm very happy that you are listening keenly.
Thank you.
Okay, ma. Right.